Joining me now is Matt Morrison. He is Executive Director of Working America. Matt, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Cenk. Really excited to be here.
No problem. Matt, talk to me about what Working America is. What is the organization? What do you guys do?
You know, back in 2003, the AFL-CIO recognized that there are too many working people outside the ranks of unions who didn't get our message and weren't sharing in the prosperity and growth that we were trying to build. Working America was the solution to that. We would go door to door talking to people that don't have a union on the job and preach strength in numbers. That is, if we can all join together and make sure that our collective economic, purchasing, labor, political strength is joined, then our voices can't be ignored. Since then, we've talked to 12 million voters all around the country, worked in hundreds of races, and we're excited about what that means for this year.
So I'm fascinated by the idea and generally like it as a concept because I believe that actually reaching voters one-to-one is an incredibly effective way of making a political difference. And we saw that in the Ocasio-Cortez race where her volunteers reached enough people to swing the election despite the fact that she was outspent 10-1 by a corporate Democrat in that case. So. But I'm curious how long this has been going on, and I want to just dive into some of the details. So when did this project begin?
So Working America started about 15 years ago. We started in Ohio, Seattle, and really built out from there. Our goal was to go door to door and get people who were in these battleground communities but weren't hearing our message. We learned cycle after cycle that the more we talk to people and the more we talk to them on a year-round basis, we're not showing up every 2 years or 4 years to take the temperature and ask for a vote. We're there in January and February talking about what's happening with your local economy. Have you had job openings? Have you had factory shutdowns? And it's that type of relationship building. That's what you talk about when you mention face-to-face contact, really knowing your community. That's made us particularly credible. It's really this type of face-to-face, relationship-based organizing that makes a difference. You know, if you think about the ubiquity of digital content and television content, there are millions, if not billions of dollars or their equivalent that go to trying to communicate with voters, whether it's media coverage, whether it's social media feed, etc. If what we're trying to do is communicate through that channel, we're putting a pebble in the ocean. It's just too much volume, and we can't distinguish between it. If your listeners, if your viewers think about how many ads they got served today on their personal devices or on computers, and none of them actually made an impression, it's you really have to get past that point and get to where someone's going to recognize you and listen to you. So that's what we've been doing, and it works amazingly well.
So let's talk about that. So first of all, how do you find the people to talk to? Do they have to be non-union, and how do you know if they're working? So who do you know to talk to in any particular town that you're in?
Well, one of the things that we do is grow our teams from the communities that we're organizing in. So that gives you a head start from the beginning. People know their neighborhoods. They know which homes aren't occupied, what time folks are likely to get home, that type of thing. We also do things like work from the voter file because we're sometimes targeting people based on the likelihood of turning them out or trying to persuade them to support our candidate.
Out of all those years of talking to these voters across the country who are working class Americans, what did you guys learn?
Well, the number one thing is that whether you're talking to someone in North Philadelphia or small town Lima, Ohio, what people have on their minds is what kind of education is my kid going to get? Is there going to be a job for them that's stable, that can allow them to raise a family and stay close to home? Can I afford healthcare? Can I afford my medications? It's that type of really practical thing. So there's a common bond that connects people. In a world where we often see the polarization, the conflict in our politics, most folks that we talk to, they're not politicized. They aren't thinking about this stuff. And so there's a lot of room to have conversation and move people.
But I got to keep it real. So we've done all these conversations, 12 million voters, but the Republicans are still winning. And for all the things that you just mentioned, their health care, the Republicans are shredding it. Their wages, the Republicans are helping corporations suppress their wages. So what's going on? Why are they still winning?
Well, when someone is presented with, we need to have an economic message, plain and simple. Economics is much broader and touches a lot more people than things that are closer to home that focus squarely on a progressive base. So, we've tried a strategy of focusing solely on our base, and that didn't get us the results that we wanted. We've got to go broader, but something that touches on everyone's lives. The second challenge, quite frankly, is that we haven't sufficiently gone after the tactics or used the tactics that are going to make sure we break through. And let me give an example of what I mean by that. If you look at the broadcast outlets, and the vast majority of people experience political information through, say, local broadcast television. Sinclair Broadcast owns, 7 properties in central Ohio. They have all of these must-run segments. There's a clear bias in their coverage. When are folks ever going to hear a message about how someone is voting on repealing the Affordable Care Act and their access to health insurance that doesn't discriminate against them based on their gender or pre-existing condition? The message just doesn't get through. Now, we've spent a long time with the status quo Democratic Party practitioners, and that type of approach it's played out. We've got to do something different. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, people haven't had a real raise in 40 years. Productivity has more than doubled, yet wages are actually not only flat, they're starting to decrease. And whether you're someone who's an out-of-work factory worker in his 50s in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, or you're a young professional just trying to get your start in New York City and you're dealing with crushing student loan debt, you're seeing the same problem. That is, working people don't have real bargaining power at scale in this country. Now, there's things that are changing that. I'd point to the West Virginia teacher strike, for example. This is the type of solidarity that we're trying to instill with folks. But it's not frequent enough that people have that experience. And so what we need to do is make sure that people start to connect the dots and connect to each other. That's hard work, but we're up to the task. We collectively as a progressive community are.
What's your sense of how angry people are? Do they get that their wages have been suppressed for 40 years and are they pissed about it? Or they miss the story and they miss the forest for the trees and they're relatively, I don't know if it's happy, but calm?
Well, there's some variation for sure. But when you present people with the facts, they start to connect the dots and say, oh, I didn't get that. I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. We were out canvassing recently in Delaware Township. This is a small community just north of Columbus. And we come across a guy, his name is James. He was just getting home from work. He's 54 years old, white male, very blue collar. You could see he's caked in mud because he's working on a construction site. And he tells us right away, I voted for Donald Trump, absolutely. But then you start to unpack what Donald Trump is proposing. And you say, did you know that Donald Trump's budget proposes cutting funding for workplace safety enforcement? You see him sit back and think, wait, I got injured on the job 20 years ago. Cutting workplace safety enforcement is a real problem for me. You have to give people information they don't know, not tell them what they know is wrong. It's as simple as an education process. Once you do that, then you have James, and he's on board for challenging Trump and challenging his allies. But you got to connect the dots for people.
Matt, we're almost out of time. I want to give people your website link and then tell you my conclusion from this conversation. So workingamerica.org is the website, everybody, workingamerica.org, okay? So Matt, as you tell me this, it's obvious to me that you guys are doing great work and that it does make a difference because I know it. I've seen it in every political campaign that I've been involved in and seen it. Talking to people and going door to door makes a giant difference. But it seems like and I know that money in politics is the #1 enemy, and that's what you guys have to deal with because they use that to buy all the ads. But I think the main issue here that you're pointing out is that the media is just not on our side. So they never told that 54-year-old worker the reality, which is that they're going to cut things that protect them. They never tell the reality. They never, and whether it's Sinclair or even the so-called neutral media, they just always cover for the Republicans because they feel it's maybe, I don't know, impolite, non-neutral to tell you what they're actually doing, which is cutting your health care, cutting your wages. And that is so much money in free media given to one side in this country. And that's what skews the playing field so much. I don't know, have I misread it, or do you think that's a huge, giant problem?
I think you're right on point. Although I'd say you need to widen the target range. Voters aren't just frustrated with Republicans, they're frustrated with Democrats. They're frustrated with a system that favors the elites and wealthy, and they don't see themselves getting served or getting ahead. And so what I would say, what I would leave you with is you can absolutely change people if you go and talk to them face to face. When we were working in Pennsylvania's 18th congressional district for Connor Lamb's election, one woman told us, I'm a Donald Trump voter, but I'm one ER visit away from losing everything. And that type of really personal connection is why she changed her vote and said, I'm voting for Connor Lamb because I need someone who's really going to stand with me. These folks, that is the Republicans in Congress that have tried to eliminate access to health care, they're going to regret that because their voters feel that in a really personal way. But in order for their voters to hear it, we got to get to their faces, and we can't use the tactics that have failed us in the past.
Yeah, I totally hear you. And by the way, of course I agree. The corporate Democrats are a scourge upon the country. And they take it, and unfortunately they then get people to think that maybe progressives are for the elite, when that is the exact opposite of the truth. So we need uncorrupted candidates, and we need them right away to actually fight for the American people. Matt Morrison, Executive Director of Working America, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it.